Nam June Paik Art Center. Nam June Paik's media art gained momentum by his first solo show, Exposition of Music, Electronic Television, in which he presented televisions with inner circuits modified and manipulated as a work of art. This exhibition was one of the art historical occasions that brought television into the realm of art for the first time. The exhibition was also a watershed for Paik to move from an experimental composer to a pioneer of media art. Nam June Paik presented Random Access in this exhibition. This work exemplifies Paik's brilliant idea that audiences can be the agents of their own sound production. Through his experiments with TV, Paik ultimately sought to create a machine that anyone could play like a piano. Nam June Paik strived to move beyond manipulating the television that enabled two-way feedback toward creating a machine. Following this aim from 1964, the Paikabe video synthesizer was produced in 1969, for the first time in collaboration with the Japanese engineer Shuya Abe. The synthesizer could receive external sources such as from the camera and edit the color and shape of video images in real time. After TV, the next piece of Paik's work we'll look at is a robot, the first robot he ever built, called K456. It's a lot different from what we think of as a robot now, isn't it? It was created in 1964. In 1964, Paik migrated to the US, where he developed his video art in full swing. Not only producing video images, he combined them with sculptures and installations. First exhibited in the second annual Avant-Garde Festival of New York, Robot K456 is Nam June Paik's first work that took the shape of a robot. In 1982, as part of Paik's retrospective at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the robot appeared in an accident performance where it was struck by a car while crossing a road. Paik called the performance as the first catastrophe of the 21st century, trying to reveal the falsehood of mechanical rationality and propose a humanized machine that possesses human anxiety and emotion, which also experiences life and death. Robot K456 exemplifies Paik's relentless interest and collaboration, which can be seen in his journey from the experiments in television and computer and robot production in the 1960s. The second robot we looked at is Genghis Khan. In the 1990s, Nam June Paik lived the life of a nomad traveling around the world. At the Venice Biennale in 1993, where he received the Golden Lion Prize as a representative of the German pavilion, Paik explored the exchange and communication between the East and the West through an exhibition under the theme of Electronic Superhighway from Venice to Ulaanbaatar, while planning a large-scale project for the memory and history of media from a view that electronic superhighway, that is the era of the internet that he had predicted 28 years ago, was being materialized. Before moving on to Nam June Paik's satellite art, we should point out how interested he was in interactive live broadcasting. TV Buddha is a video installation of a Buddha statue watching the image of himself on a TV screen recorded in real time. The closed circuit structure of the camera, the subject, and the monitor in a mutual cycle is frequently used in Nam June Paik's work, and the combination of the enlightened Buddha and television creates an interesting contrast. TV Buddha connotes Paik's idea of a live broadcast that enables interactive television operations that ask and answer each other. Through the aforementioned TV Buddha, Paik was demonstrating his interest in live broadcasts and globalization. In 1977, Paik performed a satellite performance at the Kassel Documenta with Joseph Beuys, Charlotte Moorman, Douglas Davis, and others. Later, Paik expanded his interest in satellites and created the satellite trilogy. The first satellite project, Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, was broadcast live on January 1st, 1984 in the US, France, South Korea, and Germany. Planned by Paik, the satellite show involved the cooperation of broadcasting stations in each city, including the US public station WNET, and artists from all around the world, presenting 22 sequences that blended performances of renowned artists of the time, such as John Cage, Mercy Cunningham, Allen Ginsberg, and Charlotte Moorman. Technologies realized by video synthesis, such as telecommunication, telepresence, and teleport, trace the utopia in which various time spaces are connected, implying that Paik's idea of technological utility is for connection and liberation. Now let's take a final look at Paik's laser work. His works that used laser, including 3 elements, symbolize Paik's continuous artistic attempts from tape music to television and video to broadcasting station and satellite and to video installation and laser. He anticipated that in the history of moving images, the notions of time and space had been fundamentally changed by video and television, and it was laser for him that could transform them once again. Throughout his life, Paik proved that the avant-garde is to keep challenging himself without being complacent with one medium or a small success. Later on, he expanded his technological realm into other media like laser, and while suffering a stroke since the mid-1990s, he never ceased to take his artistic step forward until he passed away in Miami in 2006. In 2019, The Tape, which hosted a major retrospective of Paik's work, said that Paik already foresaw 5 themes in the 90s that are indispensable today: the internet and video art, the climate crisis, global media, and smartphones. These 5 themes have become indispensable not only in contemporary art, but also in everyday life. And as a pioneer of video art, Paik was able to foresee the future. Paik is a pioneering media artist working with various technologies in experimental ways. He saw the artist's role as consisting in thinking about the future and sought for better ways of global communication through art. Regarded as one of the forerunners of a new breed of artists who are scientists, philosophers, and engineers at the same time, and as a very special and genuine genius and futurologist with foresight, Paik still lives on right here as the most contemporary artist today. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Nam June Paik's art world as it relates to technology, which we focused on the collection of the Nam June Paik Art Center.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park, for this fascinating account of the legacy and of Nam June Paik's work and also his relevance today. Now, you mentioned Tate's observation that Paik actually foresaw 5 key themes that we are still grappling with today, including the internet, climate crisis, and global media. Now, as a director of the Nam June Paik Art Center in Seoul, how do you see Paik's vision of technology's democratic potential resonating with or even challenging artists working in the current world today? And is it possible to hold his radical vision or his radical optimism?
Thank you. You are visionary and serious question. So, it's a real Namhee Park, not AI. So, 네, 저는 제2의 백남준 그리고 미래의 백남준을 발굴하는 것 또한 그 백남준 아트센터가 할 일이라고 생각합니다. 미래의 백남준은 백남준 예술정신을 관통한 것을 말하고요. 백남준 예술정신은 새로움을 향한 실험성, 그리고 소통과 참여의 예술 형식, 그리고 세계 평화에 대한 열망으로 요약할 수 있습니다. 저는 AI 아니고 실제 백남준 아트센터의 이제 박남희입니다. 사실 마야의 질문도 굉장히 중요한 질문이었고 백남준의 예술을 이야기할 수 있는 핵심적인 이야기입니다. 그리고 저는 이제 백남준의 예술 정신을 이어서 얘기를 이끌어 나가는 백남준 아트센터의 관장으로서 미래 백남준에 대한 고민도 하고 있고 미래 백남준을 발굴하는 것 또한 저의 이제 미션이라고 생각하고 그 미래 백남준 그리고 백남준이라고 하는 그 키워드는 사실상 백남준의 예술 정신을 관통하고 있는 그런 사람들을 미래 백남준이라고 얘기할 수 있을 텐데요. 미래의 백남준은 백남준의 예술 정신을 관통한 사람 그리고 그 백남준의 예술 정신이라고 하면 3가지로 요약할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 첫 번째는 새로움을 향한 실험적인 정신이 첫 번째이고요. 두 번째는 소통과 참여를 하는 예술 정신입니다. 두 번째고 그리고 마지막으로는 세계 평화에 대한 열망이라고 할 수 있습니다. 이 3가지가 백남준의 예술 정신이라고 요약할 수 있을 텐데요. 마야가 조금 전에 정리해 준 것처럼 기술의 민주적 잠재력과 평화의 가능성이라고 하는 게 결국에는 백남준 정신의 핵심이라고 할 수 있습니다. 백남준은 기술에 대해서 민주적 잠재력과 평화의 가능성을 낙관하고 있지만 그는 단순한 기술 유토피아를 꿈꿨던 사람은 아니었습니다. 그는 세계에서 일어나는 많은 사건들에 대해서 관심의 끈을 놓지 않았고 쉼없이 정보를 섭취했습니다. 매일매일 신문을 읽었고 메모하고 찾아보고 세계의 사이사이를 이어갔던 사람입니다. 사람과 사람 사이, 그리고 사람과 정보 사이, 기계와 정서 사이, 그리고 도시와 도시 사이, 예술과 기술 사이, 개념과 현상 사이들을 이어갔던 사람입니다. 즉 그의 기술은 긍정적인 태도 이면에 세계에서 펼쳐지고 있는 불평등, 비평화에 대한 저항과 이를 극복하고자 하는 도전의 정신, 그리고 세계에 대한 지속적인 관심이 있었습니다. 그가 남긴 중요한 문장 하나를 떠올려 봅니다. 그는 예술가는 미래를 사유하는 사람이라고 했습니다. 이 말은 자신을 포함한 수많은 사람들에게, 수많은 예술가들에게, 그리고 예술가와 함께 사는 사람들에게 각각의 의미를 나눠주는 말입니다. 적어도 그의 긍정과 낙관이라고 하는 것은 미래를 향해 있다는 것을 잊지 말아야 할 것 같습니다. 다시 말해서 백남준이 세계를 대하는 태도는 예술의 실천은 모두 미래를 향한 그런 생각들이었습니다. 그리고 그 미래에 대한 생각들은 아놀드 쇤베르크의 아방가르드 정신을 이어가는 것이었고 우리는 새로운 매체를 향해 발굴하고 그걸 활용해서 예술로 만들어내는 그 모든 일에는 그러한 도전의 정신, 저항의 정신이 자리에 있습니다. 세계를 연결했던 삶을 살았고 새로운 매체를 만들었던 백남준의 기술에 대한 낙관적인 생각에는 실제로는 도전과 현실을 극복하고자 하는 대안적인 생각이 자리에 있었다라는 것들을 환기시키고 싶습니다. 그리고 미래의 백남준들은 실제로 지금 그것을 하고 있지 않을까라는 생각을 합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. You also mentioned his, being avant-garde in terms of always pushing the boundaries of new technologies and experimenting with new technologies. And even though he was very interested in the ideas of truth, however, what he said that what supersedes in his practice ideas of truth and ideas of aesthetics is newness. But at the Nam June Paik Art Center, you face unique challenges in actually preserving works that are technologically that are obsolete technologies. So how does Paik's approach of constant experimentation and adaptation influence your strategies for how you preserve the work and how you support artists in their exploration of new media and your advice to them?
그래서 매우 중요한 질문이고 이건 백남준뿐만 아니라 전자미디어를 구동하는 미디어 아티스트들한테는 너무나 중요한 어떤 구체적인 현실적인 문제인 것 같습니다. 백남준에 관련된 이야기를 이제 먼저 좀 꺼내면 굉장히 중요한 참조점이 될 수 있을 것 같아서 백남준이 남겼던 그의 이야기들을 좀 들려드리면서 말씀을 드릴 수 있을 것 같습니다. 백남준은 TV 모니터를 1960년대 초반부터 쓰었죠. TV 모니터를 쓰고 그리고 이제는 더 이상 그 CRT 모니터가 생산되지 않습니다. 그러면 우리는 어떻게 보존해야 될까요? 백남준처럼 생각해 봐야 될 필요가 있겠습니다. 백남준은 2001년에 본인 스스로 이런 말씀을 남겨놨습니다. 1990년대쯤에 이 생산된 모니터로는 더 이상 안 되겠다. 더 이상 쓸 수 없다. 나는 모든 분들한테 부탁하고 싶다. 나의 이 초기에 90년대에 썼던 모니터들은 이제 다른 형태의 새로운 개발된 모니터로 바꿔도 좋다. 그러니 나의 작품을 사간 컬렉터들이여 나의 이야기들을 좀 귀담아 듣고 협조해 주길 바란다라고 하는 2001년도에 이런 멘션을 했었습니다. 이거는 백남준의 그 미디어를 대한 태도 그리고 어떻게 보존해야 될 것인가에 대한 문제를 핵심적으로 짚고 있는 문제입니다. 백남준은 기술 자체에 대한 진화를 적극적으로 받아들였고 수용적인 태도로 이해하고 있었고 그리고 미디어의 본질이 무엇인가, 그 컨텐츠의 본질에 대해 집중하도록 그렇게 만들었습니다. 저희는 미디어에 대해서 백남준이 갖고 있는 개방성, 유연성, 민첩성이라고 하는 세 가지의 태도를 참조해 보아야 될 것 같습니다. 다만 이제 저희가 보존해야 될 가치의 오리지널한 원형들은 보존하되 컨텐츠를 보다 잘 볼 수 있도록 유연한 어떤 미디어를 개방할 필요는 있겠다라고 하는 그런 관점을 가지고 있고, 이런 관점들을 통해서 본다면 동시대 미디어 아티스트들한테도 굉장히 중요한 참조점이 되지 않을까라는 생각이 듭니다. 물론 모든 아티스트들은 사실 각자만의 그 지속 가능성이라고 하는 방법론을 가지고 있다고 생각합니다. 그 지속 가능성이라고 하는 부분들은 각자의 철학과 그리고 작품의 내용을 결정하는 문제이기 때문입니다. 제가 백남준의 사례, 백남준의 관점을 말씀드렸던 것은, 백남준은 그러한 그 관점들에 대해서 유연하게 기술의 진화를 스스로 받아들이고 거기를 직접적으로 본인의 작품을 보존하는데 어떤 통로로 여겼다라고 하는 지점입니다. 이 부분들이 새로운 미디어 아티스트들에게도 참조점이 되길 바랍니다. 답변이 됐을지 모르겠습니다.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Park. Now I would like to turn the conversation to our three artists. Park saw technology as a tool for revealing truth through artistic manipulation, using technology to reveal new ways of seeing and understanding. Today, we inhabit a world where technological manipulation more often obscures rather than reveals truth. Ayoung, how has the evolution of digital technology from Paik's era to today's hyper-connected world have influenced your artistic practice?
Thank you, Maya. Well, it would be quite jeopardizing to do the both talking and reading a bit of my script and also this one.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, that'd be really wonderful. Well, the images are and videos are random, so you don't need to connect my answers to the images. Well, I would like to talk about two really distinctive, important features of 21st century media environment. One is the hyper-connectivity that Nam June Paik wanted to achieve, which is actually already achieved and we are surrounded by media. The first thing is media fatigue that we are experiencing due to the hyper-connectivity. I remember how the COVID-19 pandemic enabled capitalism to make a new venture into our private spaces, like our bedroom. And these became our labor space in the end. We had to watch endless streaming content and artworks online all of a sudden and participate in the endless talks and events happening online from the 2020. As a media artist, I had to produce a lot more than what I used to produce, and it became a new normal now. And I somehow think that this kind of overproduction situation is not quite humane thing. We are under threat of overproduction and more, and we know that it's not for ourselves, but somehow the capitalism itself is rolling itself somehow, and we call it accelerationism. This condition is quite different from what we experienced in Nam June Paik's era. If we can call the artwork "Good Morning, Mr. Orwell," the early type of live streaming content, it was legendary and planetary because he intended to make a satellite show for the first time in the human history. It was the only that kind of artwork at the time, so that people can gather together, even though in many dispersed places. But now it became quite hard to make one time to watch the same content everywhere. We are all surrounded by 6 screens receiving satellite signals, and when Nam June Paik broadcasted through TV, now people narrowcast on so many different platforms and devices, and contents are overflowing. And now today's media artists have to fight this condition of media fatigue. What kind of media project can differentiate from and challenge the media environment like this? And this is very important question for me these days. Well, what you see is a project of mine called the Delivery Dance Series, and I've been producing this project about delivery riders and workers since 2022, and there are many series. And the second condition is algorithmic management and optimization. As you see that I worked with some certain delivery writer and created this fiction, I found that this ever-growing platform labor and gig economy created this very interesting domain of body optimization and mind optimization as well. It's all governed by algorithmic control by the apps, and it also connected to this hyperconnectivity. And this developed a certain quite unique territory that there's no division between work and leisure or labor and rest. So in that way, we agreed to provide our production more and more. So these
Thank
are
you.
two futures.
Thank you, Ayoung, for really this useful overview of the status of our media landscape today. Lawrence, how does the relationship between technological manipulation and truth-telling play out in your practice?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I think, you know, there's you know, my favorite work of Nam June Paik is actually the one with Nixon. I think it's a very early work. What's it called? Where he has Nixon. There's two images of Nixon giving this speech, and one with the magnet over his face, and then it's the electric current flow through the magnet, and it starts to distort. I think this is, for me, was kind of like, I think I saw it at a very young and formative age. It really made me understand the kind of like the necessity of intervening into media, and media and the sort of the mediation of truth telling, and the mediation of kind of politics, and the way that that kind of distorted image kind of revealed a sort of double speak that was going on there. I kind of yeah, this sort of like the breakdown of the media, what that did to the message, right? I think you can see a lot of that sort of following into some of the things I've been interested in over the last years. And I think it gets to the point very clearly that, you know, you might encounter in some of my works a kind of form of journalism when you enter the gallery or the museum. And sometimes people ask, "Oh, shouldn't this be on TV? Like TV? Shouldn't everybody know about this? What you're revealing, what you're talking about?" And besides the fact that, in fact, those works do circulate in other ways, in other medium, on TV and all those things, it always strikes me that question as kind of like strange. It's as if people assume that television and courtrooms and all these things are kind of anesthetic places. They're places where aesthetics don't happen. They're just where truth happens, right? But what Nam June Paik show in that work, and what I would really try to show in mine, is that actually the forms of mediation, you know, I mean, who go to a courtroom and don't think that's a heavily aestheticized space? They're wearing wigs, for God's sake, you know? Like, they wear gray wigs and gowns. Aesthetics play a huge role in the way that we work politically, and I think my role in the museum is actually to intervene in that and to experiment with other kinds of wig wearing, other kind of gowns, you know, not literally, but through kind of the manipulation of sound, through the way we tell the story, through which voices overlay the other, the medium itself, the whatever it is that you encounter. For me, those are the whole space of truth-telling is ripe for experimentation. And that's me not to twist the truth as such, but actually to experiment and not to forget that we are constantly being mediated to. And aesthetics plays a very you know, important role in the way that media happens and is disseminated. And that's still things we need to experiment with. And clearly, with the fatigue that you discussed before, there's a necessity there. There's a call to aesthetic practitioners to do exactly that kind of work.
Yes, to get to your point, actually, when you referenced Nixon's and the video, the television, and how Nam June Paik was saying that one way of exercising democracy is actually to talk back to television. rather than being constantly at the receiving end. And he wanted really to provide the tools for everyone in their household through the synthesizer to be able to manipulate and to respond to the way that we're receiving media. And I mean, the title of our talk today is We Are in Open Circuits. We're all in open circuits. And Byungjun, I think you commented on that.
Yeah. So my name is Byungjun, and I want to start with the PAC's statement. We are in open circuit. So I've been designing circuit boards for many years, so I know what the open circuit is. So let's say there's a battery and there's one load. Let's say it could be some motor, and if there's a switch, then circuit runs. But open circuit, it's just open. Current doesn't flow. But I think Nam June Paik meant for this open circuit is it's not this image, but this openness is about the junction point to connect to another system or another circuit board, resulting in hyperconnectivity. And through the internet, we are all connected now. So we talk about the world after. And I want to propose another concept called we are in closed loop. But it's not my words. So it's just what they use in the mathematics or the AI or other DSP business. So in closed loop, like the feedback system, the output is fed back to the input. They use this skill in machine learning as well. They fed output of AI system and users' feedback to the input to improve models over time. And AI generated outputs and compared against the final decision and provide feedback to the model, allowing it to learn from its mistakes. Once we are fully connected, the system doesn't expand anymore and transform into a closed-loop feedback system. Photos, videos, comments, and all other digital data are processed and fed back to the input as suggestions, commercials, and ratings. That's what we see every day through social media. Then what is the process? It is the application like Facebook, Instagram, X, AI-generated image and text owned by global media corporations. One thing to point out is in closed loop, the process learns from its mistake. And what is mistake? That mistake is the low profit. They just pursue the way that brings more profit, not truth. I think that's how it goes. For them, it's not important if it's true or not. The important thing is the profit.
Thank you. We talked about Pike really believed that increased visibility and connection would lead to greater understanding. Now today we really face a paradox because we have unprecedented access to media and to images. However, this does not necessarily translate in action or change. The question is to you also, Byungjun, does your work with robots and sound instigate empathy and connection in ways that traditional media cannot do?
Yeah, so like I was a sound artist before, and I was recording the voices from the refugees, multicultural families, the marginalized people, and strangers in our society, and delivered their voice through my headphones that you might have seen just now. So I'm also developing my own device, a platform, which is headphones. And these headphones has a functionality that it recognizes the position indoor and outdoor very accurate, and I can map the space and then deliver exact size specific sound in the spot. So for instance, from the recorded materials, I go out and then the scatter around the sounds in the open space, and then they walk around and then they listen to the sounds outdoor. But then while I was doing these kind of jobs, some there's one point that I got a bit frustrated that it didn't really sound out. I mean, I expected more more from the audience. I mean, I wanted them to act, or I wanted them to speak out of this reality, but it didn't really happen. So that's where the point that I started making robot out of nothing. So I started building robot from the scratch. So I wanted to suggest to total stranger that they have never seen, and then they give out hands to the audience. So I made 12 robots, and then they give out hands to student, to the audience, and then uh, their response is really interesting for me to see that sometimes there's a fear, but sometimes they think of it as really funny, and sometimes they think of it they're just begging, or sometimes they shake hands, and somehow I got more responses from the people who is seeing the exhibition, and so for me, there was a I still record sounds from them, but while I was doing this robot as a yeah, they became my actors, and they became my colleagues, and they became the people that I wanted to represent, and I'm making a theater with them, and I think I through that I got some public empathy.
And through basically there was also with these with the robots you also have a sound element, right? And so the information in terms of your interest in bringing out the voices of refugees, of the marginalized, of was all done through
Yes,
through robots.
yes,
And this is how you achieved more empathy.
yes, true. Yeah. So I also use the headphones, and while the outdoor, while the audience is listening to these kind of stories, and then also combined with robots, and they come out at certain point, and then audience and robot, they somehow interact each other. These things are happening in my performance.
Thank you. Lawrence, do you feel hope about the possibility of moving beyond visibility to spark change, or are the system that we find ourselves in intractable?
Ya Latif. Ya Latif.
I mean, especially today, you know,
Yeah,
what
it's
we're
hard. It's hard,
experiencing
to be
is,
honest. You have to work on feeling hope. But
yeah.
I think I think I wouldn't do what I did if I didn't feel there was a necessity to create the conditions for listening to those voices. If I felt that it was totally precluded, that there was no possibility to hear, then I don't think I would continue. So maybe that's get to the hope part. Um, but also, um, sometimes working, of course, with people in a collaborative way, build a kind of a set of. I think it's more. You know what? I think it's more about resistance than hope.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's really trying to understand how resistance manifests itself, where it emerges, and to make sure that we are neither seen, or the subjects in the work are neither seen purely as people with hope for something in the future, or as simply the sum total of their victimhood, but actually people who are resisting. And that is the challenge. To hear resistance sometimes emerge out of setting those conditions for listening. Sometimes it means you have to completely take away their voice. It's kind of counterintuitive. No, it doesn't mean that you just put a microphone in front of someone and we hear them. And in fact, this is what media art tell us, right? That the media is in fact the means through which these things happen. So I think making those interventions, constructing those spaces in order to hear these subjects as resistant is really important. I did a lot of work in Lebanon in looking at, not recently, this is from the last 15 years before the recent war in Lebanon, at all of the Israeli planes that come into Lebanese airspace. And what you see there are two modes of resistance happening in the same video. So I gathered all the videos from the last 15 years. What you see is, you see someone actively trying to look for the plane in the sky, trying to find the source of the noise, like something rumbling above them. You can never really see it, right? The sound is so much bigger than the plane. So they're looking for the plane. This is one way in which the insistence to document the violation of that airspace, the production of fear was important. What you always heard in the background was also people talking, having fun, drinking beer, actively ignoring that sound, right? And I always found those documents so, it's then when I know I have an artwork, because there's something that is not, that the artifact is so complex, right? That it take years to kind of pull out everything that's going on in that video, right? From the ignoring and the documenting at the same time. And I think those are really moments I try to stay attuned to, and really want to sort of allow people to hear in that full complexity. And that might not be playing the video, right? That might be doing something else, like whatever it might be. But finding strategies to kind of pull out the full complexity of those moments of resistance is really important.
I think this is also at the core of Nam June Paik's belief in technology, also as a mode of developing creative, or putting forth creative power that resides in communities. But Ayoung, maybe building on these ideas of visibility and invisibility, your work have dealt with technology's role in modern labor conditions, and you mentioned it briefly before. But in what way does this relate to the visibility and invisibility of what you labeled as platform workers?
Sure. Since I've been working about gig labor and delivery workers, especially in a series called Delivery Dancer Series, I researched a lot about this, how the algorithm functions behind the platform, and how those individual riders interact with the app. Even though they are riding on the physical road, they had to constantly watch the app, and they are almost absorbed into the app rather than the actual road. And this sort of bifurcation or multiplication of perception of reality is already in the work. And in that way, they have to be really hyper alerted. Otherwise, they would cause traffic accidents, very dangerous accidents. And yeah, all those things I got to learn. Luckily, I found a very skillful female delivery rider, and I followed her for a few days, and she interviewed. I had an interviewer and went out for delivery with her, which was an excellent liberating experience during the pandemic. And this on-demand service, well, actually, I saw so many delivery riders wearing the Talabat and Deliveroo uniforms. Well, actually, in Korea, we don't wear uniforms. The riders don't wear, and it was very unique. Actually, I found it quite fashionable, the uniforms, the color. I like to have one for myself. And those kind of on-demand services create a new type of labor, the invisible labor. Because during the pandemic in my country, South Korea, people are crazy about this velocity and the speed, and everyone started to order through the app. But since they put the food box in front of the houses and we don't have any interaction with them, so we don't know who they are, their faces. We have no idea what kind of people they are. And one day I got to be so interested in those people. Actually, it will be nice to play the slides, I think, of the previous ones. Then, yeah. So people's dependency on platforms and tech companies are increasing. Also, it expands so many people are involved as a gig workers on the platforms, those invisible labor. Um, I think capitalism is so very, very creative um, and inventive. The gamification logic has been appropriated by the platforms, and with those level up system, they could kind of make this a voluntary labor. They do work more. If you find the examples in Amazon fulfillment centers, they are distributed of this small gamepad like Nintendo Switch kind of thing, and then to play the games, they had to work more to get the game money. And in that way, they voluntarily work more for the company. So it was a very kind of vicious way of capitalistic tactic to improve the productivity. So this kind of self-efficiency and productivity and all entangled with those newly invented media, I think. And we have to think about the other way around to utilize those and appropriate those media in other way around, I think.
We spoke, I mean, obviously we spoke here now, visibility, what is visibility in our digital age? Potential for truth, fear of surveillance, empathy, threat, Byungjun, use of robots to create empathy. Lawrence, your forensic investigations, it's all about, very much about ways of putting forth and making us maybe see or listen in a different way, and Ayoung's engagement with the hidden mechanism of platform labor. Now, Pike envisaged that television as a medium for equitable cultural exchange between East and West. Now today, also despite and perhaps because of our constant flow of global content, we see persistent hierarchies and imbalances in how cultural narratives circulate and whose voices are heard. Actually, Pike was mentioned once that he said, one of the professor in Kyoto University, he's saying that if the West knows about the East, 1/10 of what the East knows about the West, there will not be wars. June, do you think that your integration of Eastern philosophical tradition with contemporary technology directly addresses these cultural dynamics? Are you conscious of navigating this broad power imbalances between East and West? Or do you think that we are more globalized today?
Yeah, it's a good question. And may I have the...
Yes, can you go for that? I know.
Then I'll just... Sorry. I'll just start without the image. So well, my practice, one of my practice was the... So from here, you might have to change it to page 28. So 28 images afterwards. And then you will see some two people are bowing together, you know, with the headphones. After that, one more, more. Yeah, this one. So it took me so long, but I do wanted to show this photo. But I'm sorry, uh, because like it was my experiment about the how we should like communicate or how we live together. Or so Nam June Paik, you thought about the world like all connected, like, but that I use the headphones only with very limited people. I experiment with them. So what this headphone does is that, so you hear something you when you wear the headphone, and you approach to someone who is wearing the headphone, and you start to listening the other person's sound, so which is mixing the two. So you approach another person, then you with your sound you mix like that person's sound, and so they approach other people and mix sound, and they are sitting together listening together what the other person is listening, and so on. And then on top of that, like when they bow like this, they can exchange the sound. So with the new sound, they meet the new people, and then they mix the sound. And so I was experimenting these kind of things with like let's say 10 people. And next one could be so this one is called Dancing Leathers, and leathers are kind of like it is about the hierarchy, and you step on it, and then it's the tool for going up and higher. And I thought like Korean young people are just living like a ladder, and I made a ladder to move around like this, like this. And so they dance basically, and then they move horizontally. And they free from their job, and then they enjoy themselves. So it's for the young people in Korea. Yeah, and the next one. So it's another photo, and it's also I get the inspiration from this kind of like Korean painting. And this one is kind of the first robot show that I did in 2018, and I made 12 robots, and 6 right arm robots and 6 left arm robots. And as you can see, they are looking a bit different, and I made a robot community, and 2 different species are living together and casting shadows to each other. They live where, and then at certain point they all dance together. Yeah. So I think maybe that could be the last one. So I the give the workshop to the rural like farmers, young farmers. So working with young farmers, we deal with robots like this. So we carry robots to suburban areas and make the art piece with them. And it is also really meaningful thing. Also, I experiment these kind of things within Korea and within very limited like audience, but I'm still experimenting these things. Thank you.
I like your idea of horizontal power dynamics and horizontal communication. Lawrence, you also deal, obviously, again, testimony and voice as evidence. Now, building on maybe June's exploration of horizontal communication and power dynamics, how do you approach that the challenge of amplifying voices that even are silenced, marginalized, or systematically actually silenced, especially today's, or discredited in official narratives? Yes, you mentioned a bit, but can you give us maybe more example, because you dealt with it I mean,
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so I wear kind of two hats, right? One of the things I do is I run an organization called Earshot, which does audio research for human rights and environmental advocacy, and we reconstruct events based on the sounds that are heard from a given event. And we worked very closely on the Hind Rajab case for Al Jazeera. Hind Rajab, the girl who and her family who were murdered in a car while they were trying to hide from tanks that were coming past them. And I think there's a moment in that case which show both the kind of futility and the necessity of that work, where Layan Hamade, the Hind's cousin, says, the tanks are next to me, they're shooting at us. And that was broadcast 6 months before we released our evidence that the gunshots that came to that car were coming from between 12 and 20 meters away. Those months were spent looking at every single shot, looking at every single part of that voice, every single thing, in order to come to that conclusion. The conclusion that she had already said and already spoke to the world, right?
Yes.
And so in a way, it took all this work, all this forensic audio work to turn her from a victim into a witness, right? She said it all along. She actually said it. So you see the necessity sometimes to transform a voice, you know, what it takes to produce a kind of audibility, to open a capacity for audibility to someone, right? That was just discredited, was not even discarded, wasn't even understood. That she could be telling the truth. Now she's a child, she's this, but she was telling the truth. In a way, this is what I say, it's the futility. She had said it all along, right? It's heartbreaking to know that it took all that work for us to be able to take her seriously. But it's also shows that the kind of labor in listening, that it's not just a given, right? That somebody speaks and we hear them. It takes a lot of work. So yeah, sorry to bring this heavy story, but that's one very direct example of what you speak about. And then there's other ways where, you know, you work with communities, you work with, you know, I just finished this big project in the Golan Heights, and there was a beautiful moment there where what we're looking at there is preserving the soundscape of the Golan Heights before it's these wind turbines are built on this land, and it will flood with noise the whole area. So we're trying to make all these recordings of the area before it disappears. And I was working with sound artists and musicians from the Julan, from the Golan Heights. And the one we were working with most closely, Bushra Khan Jabu Saleh, I told him, okay, what are we going to record? And he said, we're going to record water pumps. So I say, water pumps, you know? I was imagining like something beautiful, you know, some rare bird, some, you know, I don't know what, I had a romanticized vision of this place in the mountains that I could never access. And sure enough, it came back, water pumps. And not only one water pump, 5 different recordings of 5 different water pumps, right? Those water pumps sound like water pumps here in Abu Dhabi, sound like water pumps wherever. There was nothing special about them. So I sat with these recordings, you know, I skip forward, I try to hear what's interesting in them. And in the end, the more I work on this project, the more I realize that actually water has been dispossessed from those people for so long. And that these water pumps were actually a node in an autonomous network that they built to resist the expropriation of natural resources from their land. And so that water pump, as mundane as it sounded, was everything for these people. You know, their whole kind of like fight was in there. That was the victory. It was a victorious sound. It was a victory song. So sometimes going on these kind of journeys with a sound is also really interesting. And using, what I try to do is use the works not only to sort of show the sounds that are being preserved in that case, but also to try to break down this journey. so that you follow that. You know, you also hear them as mundane, as victorious. You know, I also want you to sort of take you through a point where that sound transforms from its mundanity to its sort of extraordinary potential. And so I think, yeah, you get surprised also. It's not only that you're just bringing a mic and amplifying these voices, you're constantly challenged in this situation. I think it's being open to those challenges and where they emerge and where the limits of your own listening are also met.
It's interesting because basically you are using technology. You spoke first about silencing a voice, and my question was going to be, is like how you worked for a month to make visible and to make audible a sound that was silent. And I just wonder, is your voice silent? And how do you avoid your voice being silent when you are making visible what nobody wants to be visible, maybe?
I think anyone who sees my work would not say that my voice is silent in the work. It's very heavy-handed. I'm often in the works themselves, so I don't think I have any risk of being myself silenced, unfortunately. Probably to the disdain of my haters.
I would say that rather than unfortunately.
But thank you, yeah.
It's, but also, and also you move now, with the last example you gave, you moved from really that scientific, rigorous work that you do, forensic investigation, to also the artist that you are also. It's like bringing, and I think, Byungjun, you said that technology is not only about revealing truth, but there is also the power of creativity in producing stories and fiction that also that could be as valid as direct truth telling. I think we're coming towards the end of our stories and panel, but I have one last question. We've discussed how artistic practices and technological power structures have evolved from 1984 up until today, and I'd like to briefly look at the future. And looking ahead, what do you think, what are the specific challenges do you think that artists and institutions will need to address in the coming period? And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Park.
백남준 아트센터 입장에서 이제 얘기를 좀 드리자면요. 백남준의 예술을 보존하고 그의 레거시를 통해서 이제 미래의 백남준이 성장할 수 있도록 그렇게 토대를 만들고, 그리고 동시대 예술가들을 또 작품 제작과 담론 형성에 이제 자양분을 제공하는 일이 저희한테는 제 과제라고 할 수 있습니다. 그리고 예술가의 미래에 대한 사유를 지속할 수 있도록 우리 기관으로서 좀 도와야 될 것 같고, 그리고 백남준이 후기 산업 사회에 관한 보고서를 쓰고, 그리고 정보 초고속도로를 고안했던 것처럼 세계가 당면한 현실이 무엇인지, 그리고 예술가와 함께 고민하고, 그리고 이것을 사회하고 서로 소통하게 하는, 공명하게 하는 일, 그게 저희 기관이 해야 되는 일이라는 생각이 듭니다. 백남준이 1969년에 한 말을 한 번 더 이제 말씀드리면서 마무리 짓고자 합니다. 예술과 기술에서 무엇보다 중요한 것은 또 다른 과학적 장난감을 발명하는 것이 아니다. 너무 빠르게 변화하는 전자표현 방식인 기술을 인간적으로 만드는 일이 너무나 중요하다. 이게 저희에게 여전히 유효한 과제인 것 같습니다. 네.
That's very nicely said. Talking about maybe transforming technology into more humans. June, you said also, how do you see the future human-robot relationship, human-machine relationship?
Yes. So I want to mention about the merging of human and machine. Like Elon Musk's the Neuralink, I think it's a good example. And this will rely on the nature of the humans who fear death and will take advantage of the commercialization strategies of large corporations. money will soon create another formulas for immortality and confine humanity within capitalism. We must establish ethics and order that can limit and overcome this and suggest alternative ways of living and dying. And I think this is really important, and the artists and other other people should make some rules about it. Yeah.
Ayoung and Lawrence, any last messages of hope? I know you hate this word, but this is what we live by these days.
I'll make a very short kind of
yeah,
answer.
what can we be optimistic about?
Right. Well, actually, Byungjun and I had a very short discussion on the way to come here in the car. Can we actually answer this question, optimism? We don't see any optimism in techno. Well, no, I'm not a techno pessimist nor an optimist, but I love using technology and to explore how its essential nature is functioning, because ever-growing technology makes us really blind from many. It's black box. Everything is kept in the black box. Even though we use those technologies every day, we don't know how it actually functions. And what I found very interesting in terms of tactical media, in a section in techno activism, there is an app called Gojek in Indonesia. And Gojek is a really widespread app, I heard, and there are so many riders found it quite not delivering their necessity, their needs and actual road condition and their circumstance. And what the riders union did, they invented their own kind of pirate app or parasite app. They hacked the Gojek app and created certain little tiny minor apps that can be used on top of Gojek app. So they load the app and then they use another app on top of it. So they spoof their position. GPS spoofing happens not because of this sinister purpose, but to reflect the actual road condition, which doesn't be reflected on the Gojek app. Or the senior riders, they want to enlarge the text. So this kind of tiny little gesture to improve the apps itself is, I think it's a really beautiful kind of resilience. Every one of us are talking about resilience through the technology. And well, these minor things are the only things that we can do. Yeah, creating little cracks and kind of subtle kind of features in it. So,
Lawrence, optimism, does it lie in subverting?
I'm not sure where it lies, but I think I would just end by, one of my favorite writers, Adaniya Shibli, in her, if you haven't read A Minor Detail, you should read it. But she talks about how the future and justice are intertwined. And without one, there's no other. So the pursuit of justice is the pursuit of the future. And that's why we do it.
So beautiful. That's so, I know, it gives us hope. I don't know, do we have time for questions or no? Does anybody have any questions? I think we're fine. All right, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here, for our audience, and thank you for our panelists.